Hello and welcome back to Cymatic TV. This is going to be your energy update. All about the energies that are coming through the universal system, through the solar system, through the earth system and its ley line and chakras of the earth. And then ultimately, obviously, through you and I. So if you got the messages from energy last week, there was all about, the energy was talking about an anticipation, sort of like an intention. And it was very intense, an intense intention coming through the energies at the moment. It was building up to something. And we could see this happening on the sun at the same time this week here. So just here on the left-hand side here, you'll see the X-ray flux. And you can see that sort of build-up of energies that have been happening over the past sort of like 2 or 3 days. There's been quite a few M flares actually, and there is a couple of M flares that are coming in our direction. They're not massive and they don't have huge amounts of plasma attached to it, but there is some, and it is going to be hitting more towards the north of the earth. So you're going to be hitting much more into, I would say, the heart chakra, the third eye throat chakra, the sacrum as well, and with a touch on the crown chakra. But it's really also going to be affecting, in regards to the earth, the polar vortexes, which we will be looking into a little bit more detail, and the greater rhythms of the energy as it comes through, and we'll be looking at that a little bit later on. In the meantime, let's just have a look and see what's been going on with our sun. So here's our sun here. You can see that corona hole that's parting. There's a couple of eruptions that are happening straight in the middle of the sun just there, as you can see, and those are those M flares that are coming in our direction. There is one other flare, or there is one other eruption which has been quite spectacular really, which is on the left hand side of the sun, and that is much more attached to a filament eruption, which we will be going into a little bit in a moment. But a filament eruption that's feeding a coronal hole. So this filament eruption, which is water energy, it's very emotional energy, that's coming off of the sun on this respect, is feeding the coronal hole, which is earth energy. So this is a good combination between water and earth, makes for very fertile conditions for creating or manifesting things at the moment here on planet Earth. And that is that anticipation of that energy that's coming through at the moment. You can see here on, this is another way of looking at it, you can see those bright flashes that are directly towards the earth that were just happening there. And then you can see on the left hand side that big filament eruption that causes a massive tsunami of plasma that goes across the sun, which is that firing of that earth, that water energy into the earth energies. Let's just see what we can see here on what is called the LASCO telescope here. You can see these eruptions that are coming off. This is the earlier part of the week, and we can see the two eruptions that happen at the base there. There's 1 and 2 as it goes off, and those are the two that are coming in our direction at the moment. But look at this last one that comes off. It's absolutely phenomenal. To the left hand side there, look at it go. That is massive. But it is a lot of plasma as well, and it's not a sunspot that's creating this, so it's not coming from a fiery place. It's coming much more from a water-based element, sort of emotionally driven. And we can see a lot of the tornadoes that created this vibration. This is another look at the LASCO telescope. This is a little bit further out, so we can see a little bit further into time, as it were. There's those two eruptions there at the base that are coming in our direction, which we'll be looking at in the moment. And then finally you get the one that's off to the left hand side, which erupts there. Look at that, absolutely fantastic. Huge things. It's got to be thousands and thousands of times the size of the earth in regards to that sort of eruption. Absolutely phenomenal really. But let's just have a concentrate on what is going on those two solar flares that are coming through to us at the moment. Here we have is the end spiral, and you can see those two eruptions that are coming off just up there. You can see those two eruptions. It's two faint sort of waves, and it's certainly hitting us, and you can see right at the top there on the right hand side, and that's the vertical and above and the below the Earth. And you can see that it is actually firing. It is hitting Earth, but it is firing slightly above the Earth. And I think this is what is going to be affecting the polar vortexes. This is going to be helping straighten up and fly right. I think the words that come through with this energy here, this helps us to be much more in line with our karmic path, about what we should be doing, the plans that we want to be instigating in life and so forth. So that's how it's going to be ultimately affecting us, I think, generally. But you'll be able to see a lot more of that on the Astroflower when we get the messages from energy. But how is it really going to be affecting the Earth? Well, I think it's going to be affecting the Earth in regards to those fiery spots that we get, certainly around the Pacific ring of fire more than anything else. And as I said last week, I said there was going to be some more big earthquakes in just north of Australia into the Philippines. And sure enough, we had it. We had a 6.7. There was a slight tsunami warning attached to it. But and we also said last week that there was going to be one in South America. And sure enough, there was. It was right at the base of South America at Drake's Passage. And that's also playing into that sort of vertical energy as well. That's encouraging that. And I think that's what's coming out of the Earth's energy in general. In the future, for the coming weeks, as you can well see, this energy is going to be hitting the Earth approximately on the 15th and 16th of October. So it's coming through. It's coming through quite slowly, actually, compared with what it can do. So I don't think it's going to be a catastrophic event. But at the same time, we say that the Earth's magnetic field is incredibly weak at the moment, and it is continuingly to reduce. And that's all to do with pole shift, because pole shift is not just like that. It doesn't do that. It goes through itself like that. That's what it does. So the magnetic field reduces inside, it inverts in the middle, and then pops back out. And this is what we're seeing at the moment with the reduction, what we perceive to be a reduction of the magnetic field, but it's not. It's just like an ice skater who's spinning with their arms open, and as they spin and they pull their arms in, they actually start spinning. They create that centrifugal force. And we've seen that on the Earth. The Earth's rotation speed has been picking up over the past few years, breaking all forms of records that we know about of the rotation. And that's because the energy is being much more concentrated into the center of the Earth. We're not actually losing our magnetic field. It's just transforming. And that transformation is all to do with pole shift. So you may feel yourself as well that over the past 2 years, the world has been is gradually being turned upside down. And that's the sensation we'll get emotionally, spiritually as well, within this world, because that's what the energies are doing. Our crown chakra is becoming our root, and our root is becoming our crown, because the crown and the root chakra are exactly, they're the front end and the back end of the same chakra. So you can't separate the root and the crown. It's just that staff of Tot, which the Kundalini goes through or goes around, and as it wraps around it, it creates these central points of energy, which we would call the other chakras, like our sacrum, solar plexus, heart, third eye, and throat chakra. So they're our personal sort of chakras more than anything else. So that's the sort of energy I think that it's going to be really hitting. Let's just go back, and I want to go back and just see that big eruption that came off. First of all, we get the first couple of eruptions there. There's 1 and 2. They're the dual input that we're getting, and then we get this big eruption here, just on the left-hand side of the sun. I don't think it's really directed into the way of the Earth, but it's much more to do with water energy combining with the Earth energy. So let's just see this a little bit in more detail here. So here it is here. You can see the size of the Earth, which is just there. You can see the corona hole that's just in front of it. And if you concentrate right on the limb, you can just see just to the left of that coronal hole, there it is there, the eruption. And that tsunami of plasma, look at it as it blows into that coronal hole. So that's that water energy, that emotional energy that's driving into earth energy. So when you're doing something, make sure you don't get frustrated about what you're doing, because you may find yourself overrun by the emotions of the situation more than anything else. And also at the same time, geologically speaking, within the earth, we may see a lot more in the way of tornadoes. We've been seeing quite a lot of that, certainly within Europe. Much more than within the normal space of where we see it in America. But we've seen a lot more sort of tornadoes around those sort of areas there. I would have thought also you're going to get sort of tornadoes and stuff like that, and big sort of winds going on in the Filipino plate. Now that goes between Australia and Japan. That goes between the solar plexus and the third eye and throat chakra of the earth. And I think that's where we're going to see a little bit more in the way of storm sort of weather at the moment. But you can see there, these just on this side here, sorry, you can see these sort of tornadoes. There it is there, attaching a filament of energy, like a band of cloud in a way, and it's connected to the sun through those filaments of those tornadoes. And when those tornadoes break, or the sun is willing to release that energy, as it does now, it releases that energy, and look at that tsunami of plasma. Now that's affecting the coronal hole that's coming through. As I said, I don't think it's going to be heading towards the earth. It's heading more off north, I would say, towards the behind the earth more than anything else, north and behind the earth at the moment. So I don't think there's anything to worry about that at all. But it's an influencing thing around us more than what is going on within us, as it were. How we see the differencing between the vibrations of the earth and how it's actually affecting the polar vortexes. Now, this is a situation that happens periodically during the year. It flows from one side to the other. It sort of oscillates from the north to the south, that we're going to be able to see in much more greater detail. First things first, let's just see this. So this is the chakra map, and this is the main energies that are flowing through the earth at the moment. We get 3 lines that are associated, that are dotted, that are associated with the southern hemisphere, and you get the solid lines which is associated much more with the northern hemisphere. But together they make crossing points, and these crossing points, we have the chakras of the earth. And as I say, there over Australia you have the solar plexus, and over Japan you have the third eye throat chakra. Mount Kailash, you've got the crown chakra. The heart chakra is over St Michael's Mount in the UK. The root chakra is in Lake Salida down in South America, and the sacrum is in Mount Shasta in California. So therefore this is how the energy is distributed across the globe, as it were. But before we go on to the polar vortex, let's just have a quick look at what's going on with the earthquakes here. As you saw earlier on with the sun as it's going through, we saw that as we saw with the sun earlier on, we saw the disappearance of that coronal hole and taken over by sunspots. There is that other coronal hole that's coming in that we can see to the far left, and that's all to do with that flare that we talked about a moment ago. So therefore the earthquakes have been dulling down, as it were. And with them dulling down, this is also going to be dulling bringing down the earthquakes. And these are the earthquakes as we can see at this present time. As I said earlier on, there was this, we did say there was going to be big earthquakes in north of Australia. And that happened. That was because of that coronal hole that went through, that was going out of view, that we saw earlier on. But I do think, the effect of that filament eruption on that coronal hole will dampen the emotional side. So I don't think we'll get much in the way of earthquakes hitting in Europe. We will get a few as it comes through, but I think it's going to be much more associated to the solar plexus. So you may see a lot more earthquakes around the north of Australia in the typical regions of Bali and Fuji, not Fuji, and Papua New Guinea, sorry, and all of those sort of places there. And that's pulling our solar plexus into, and it's helping us to sort of like drive it into doing things as well. And this is where you've got to be slightly detached emotionally from the situation more than anything else. Let's go into those polar vortexes that we were talking about earlier on. So these are the energy lines that I showed you earlier on that are connected to the South Pole here at the moment. And what you'll notice is that triangle factor that goes on between the dotted lines, and it creates those vortices of energies that connect through to the South Pole, although the South Pole is now on its way towards Australia, to the bottom right of that image there. And you'll notice with the polar vortexes, when we go into it, that this triangle is constantly present, and it's constantly trying to express itself as it goes in both the northern and the southern hemispheres. Okay, so let's just have a look at those vortices and see what's going on there. So this is the northern vortex at the moment, and you can see that vague triangle in the middle there as that redness of the increasing wind speed. Now this is very high up in the atmosphere of the Earth, as it were, and you can see that spiraling factor of energy as it's trying to let me just take that back for you, as it's trying to sort of form. You can see where it's spiraling out from the center of the North Pole and creating that ring that goes all the way around. There we go, we've nearly formed that ring now. And it seems quite important until we actually see what's going on the southern hemisphere. Now, during the winter period in the north and the summer period in the south, the solar vortex is going to be really important. And look at it, it's struggling to find that triangle shape. And it does occasionally, as we can well see there, as we go back here. If we pull it back here, look at that perfect triangle sort of shape. It comes into that energies, but it does lose it and go a little bit square shape as well. And that's because I think we're moving through the polar vortex or the pole shift, as it were, and we're moving from a tri system through to a quadruple system. So we're moving from the third to the fourth dimension in regards to planets, shall we say, rather than us as individuals. But look at that triangle there. As you can see, it really does, over the last few days, desperately try and create that sort of triangle that we saw earlier on, that we could see here in the southern hemisphere. That's the energies of how it plays into that part. And I think this vibrations that are coming through the polar vortexes at the moment are really trying to sort of like straighten things out. So we've got a very strong polar vortex at the south, but there is the polar vortex in the north is coming back, and that's bringing forth this idea of getting things done. And autumn is a little bit like that. It's a little bit like a spring clean, but more like an autumn organization more than anything else. And that vortex that we can see at the moment down in the southern hemisphere, I think that's going to be dying down over the next couple of months as the northern vortex takes over a lot more strength. And as we get to the equinox, or the solstice, of December, that's where I think the two parts are going to be very much, the polar vortex is going to be very much in equal power, and then it will gradually switch over and it will become into full power in the northern hemisphere rather than in the southern hemisphere during as we go towards the springtime. And that's when the southern hemisphere goes to goes into quiet mode in the way of energies. So just to sort of like explain a little bit how the vibrations sort of happen, In autumn in the northern hemisphere, or it doesn't matter where you are, in the north or the south, during the autumn period, the energy is its lowest, and then in the springtime, it doubles in size, right on the equinox, and then on winter, on the solstice of winter, that's when it doubles in size, right on the solstice of the winter solstice, in regardless of whether it's in the north and south. And then in the spring it goes up by a third on the equinox, and then it goes up by a quarter on the summer solstice as well. And this is that sort of oscillation between the south and the north. And this is like, if you imagine when we're into the south energies, obviously for the southern hemisphere, it's really going to be affecting you to drive a lot more and get things done a lot more quickly. But in the northern hemisphere, it's more down to the organization. So whether you're in the north and the southern hemisphere, you're going to feel these energies, coming through in a different sort of sense more than anything else. Okay, so yes, that's the energies that are going to be coming through at the moment. It's certainly looking like to be influencing any fire energy at the moment, but fire and water. And I think that's going to be replaced, as we saw with that sort of other filament eruption. We're going to be having a lot more we're getting back to the water and earth energies, which we've been seeing over the past month or so, because the sun is really on a downturn. I think we've got completely out of solar height of section now, and it's really on the downturn, and I think we'll get a lot less in the way of sunspots erupting, certainly in the direction of the earth. But it's one thing to be looking out for the next couple of days, the vibrations that come through from that double hit from the M flares that we saw earlier on. I will see you soon, either over on the Astroflower or here on Cymatic TV, where you'll be able to get all the information of what's going on in our solar system and around our solar system on our Earth, and how it relates to you as an individual and to your energy and chakras and so forth. I will see you soon. Thanking you very much for subscribing, liking and sharing. In the meantime, don't forget, life should be fun, so please do enjoy.